Hey everyone, this is the Innovators Mindset with Jamie Hepp. Let's go. We got music and everything, buddy.
Oh,
All right. I have a very special guest on today. This is actually basically my Saved by the Bell high school friend who is older than me. We played basketball together. My friend Jamie Hepp, who has a new book out called Grow Right Now. And it's interesting because I grew up with you, and there's things in the book that I had no idea about. I always looked up to you, and it's just your success in the world and just the connection we had over the years. You're always someone I looked up to. So when I saw your book, I picked it up immediately to read it, and it's absolutely incredible. So I really appreciate it. But it was like also an excuse to get to catch up with you, which I haven't done in a long time.
well, it's great catching up. I mean, we just spent the last hour, talking about, your journey to America here, living in Orlando, and you're kind of a big deal, George. It's nice to see you. You're all grown up now.
Like this, and this is the weird thing. Jamie's known me since I was a kid. He's 2 years older than me. We played basketball together. Someone I've always looked up to, just done some amazing things. And we grew up in this very small town in Humboldt, Saskatchewan, Canada. And now we live on different coasts in the United States. But, we have a very fond affection for growing up in that small town of Canada. So before we get anything, can you just tell my audience, it's mostly educators, just a little bit about yourself and what you do today?
Sure. It's funny as you're bringing up the humble stuff too. I'm thinking, I used to love going over to your house and all the wonderful Greek food that it's funny.
Yeah.
I tell me we have this Greek restaurant close by to where I live. And I call the guy up and I'm like, hey, I'm kind of feeling like, you can tell he's got this thick Greek accent. So I tell him what I want. He goes to the store, buys it, then he cooks up this wonderful storm, and I feel like I'm eating at your house, George.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. It's called Taste of Greece, I think is what it's called. But anyway, sorry to take
Well,
that
it's
up.
it's funny because when I was a kid, is like baklava again.
Mm.
We would complain about it, and now like it's just every time we have it's such a special treat. So I love that.
Oh yeah, so spoiled, right? Um, so yeah, I grew up in Humboldt just like you did. So we're from a small town of 5,000 people. Um, so just short journey. I mean, I went to University of Saskatchewan, kind of that's what everybody did. Go to St. Pete's. I did the St. Pete's 1 year tour, and then U of S, and then I took on a summer job in Edmonton selling coupons door to door, and that changed my life.
Hmm.
I mean, so that whole door to door experience, coming out of my comfort zone, throwing myself out there, working on commission, working long hours. I mean, it was a grind, but it really changed my perspective on things. And next thing you know, I decided to take a year off from the U of S. My parents were freaking out. They're like, "Well, Jamie, you need a college education." I'm like, "Listen, I can always go back. I didn't burn any bridges. I can go back." And I never went back. I started my business in Vancouver, kind of ran offices all throughout Canada. Then I got my immigration to move down here in 1998. Moved to Los Angeles in 98 and haven't really looked back since, George.
You actually, it's funny when you talked about. I was this is one of the parts that really stuck out to me in the book. You talked about kind of going through when you were doing sales and people saying no and how hard it was, and then you get a yes every now and then. It would kind of change your perspective, and it's something like we talk about quite a bit in education is like there's this huge focus on dealing with failure. And I actually think it's the wrong thing to like, you hear people say like, "Hey, we need to promote failure." I'm like, no, 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 you don't need to promote failure. You have to get people to understand that failure is part of it. It's a willingness to get back up. So I think that was something that really stuck out to me. What was that experience for you when you kind of would do that, and you would how would you keep going when you would kind of fail over and over again, and then finally get that yes, but then you could go right back to failure? How like what was that process like for you?
Well, again, I like how you frame that, but initially, without really knowing like the bigger picture, with every no, I could feel myself deflating.
Hmm.
So imagine the analogy I've always used, if you have a basketball filled with air and you dropped it, well, it'll bounce right back up. I mean, it's filled with air, but you're getting deflated with all the no's to the point that if the ball hits the bottom, it's not going anywhere. It's going to be flat and so I saw turnover like crazy, and that was when the ball hit the ground and it would be flat. It wouldn't bounce, like you're just deflated. So no, 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 discouraged, thinking philosophical thoughts like, is money even really that important anyway? And
Right.
they're a commission sales rep.
Right.
And then you get the little blip of the yes, and you're like, oh, I can do this, and you get that little jolt of confidence. Um, well, after a while, after you do this for a period of time, first of all, you believe in the law of averages.
Hmm.
And the law of averages is kind of interesting. Sometimes it rewards you with your yeses on the front end, sometimes it's on the back end, sometimes it's peppered in between, but there are percentages like batting averages that you have in sales.
Hmm.
Um, and you just start learning it probably within a month, you realize that it's how you handle the no's that makes you successful. It's not the yeses. It's not the best salespeople that were going to dominate that industry. It's those that understood how to persevere through the no's and the tough times. How you handle the no, how you take the punch as a boxer, how you get hit and keep going is going to determine whether or not you're going to be successful in this, because too many people would make emotional decisions on those lows and they would bow out. I mean, even to this day, like it's still a massive turnover business that I'm in,
Hmm.
and it's really the no's. People have a difficult time handling failure and, falling on their face.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen him. His name, I think it's Ryan Serhan. He's a realtor in New York, and he was talking about. He's got his own like Netflix show, and he's like lives pretty lavish lifestyle. And he talks about wanting to quit being a realtor and how it sucked and how hard it was and all this other stuff. And he basically, I think he said he's something about calling his brother, and he said, I'm quitting. He's like, no, you can't quit when you suck. If you want to quit, you have to quit on your best day. That's when you do it. And I think, as you're talking about each one of those no's, you can just kind of roll with it and, quit, or you can say, okay, what do I need to do different? Like, what am I learning from each opportunity here? And I think that's something that I think is really important to kids to actually understand and develop, is that you get feedback from that too. How do you utilize that to maybe rethink of your approach, even with leadership? One of the things that we were having this conversation one time, and one of the principals was saying to me, my teachers won't change. My teachers will never change. And I remember saying this to them, and they were not really happy with my answer. I'm like, maybe it's you. They're like, what do you mean? I said, well, if your job is to move people forward and they're not moving forward and you're blaming them, it's probably not happening. So you can't just say the same things you're saying, but a little bit louder. You have to refocus your direction, because they're getting that no as well. And I think this kind of goes to the crux of your book. You talk about grow right now. And we always hear about, we need to lead by example, but I think really what's also important is to learn by example, that people see you're learning. So how does this book, how would this apply, to those in leadership, those really trying to, grow in their process, whatever they're doing, whether it's business, whether it's education? What do you see as this is a value of this book to kind of help them through that process?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the intent when I should probably back it all up. I never intended to write a book that was going to get published. That was never the intent. I mean, as you read the introduction, you realize that, okay, so I'll just give the quick story of how this book came about, and then your audience can decide for themselves if this book actually has value for them. But my wife encouraged me to write letters to our children when she was pregnant with Dane. This was back in 2009. And she says, hey, you should write letters. Like, I think it's important our children know that they were unconditionally loved. No matter what happens in their lives, like, hey, mom and dad just unconditionally love our children. And I thought that was a wonderful idea. And every month since then, for 16 years, I've been writing a letter to my children. At first it was one child, now it's three kids. And as I was writing these letters for my kids, I remembered in college, what am I doing watching Oprah Winfrey while I'm in college? I don't know. I think on my lunch break I watched Oprah, and there was an Oprah episode with Dr. Randy Posh, who he had pancreatic cancer. He's on Oprah with this vibrant, lively attitude, even though he had a death sentence of pancreatic cancer. And he just looked at it like, listen, I've got little children and I want to leave them something to remember dad by. And I don't want their memories to be, dad in the hospital dying. I want them to catch me when I'm fit. And he's doing push-ups and stuff like that on the stage. So I kept thinking to myself, like, what if I die as a young dad? Like that thought entered my mind as I'm writing these letters. And that's when I decided to write this book for my children. I didn't write this book for adults. And so I just kept thinking, what are the little life lessons that I've learned along the way that have contributed to my growth, that have helped me go from, an insecure, shy kid. And you and I talked about this before you started recording, like, I put on a pretty good front, that, but I had issues. I definitely had some issues growing up. But how'd you go from this insecure kid to like, I feel like I live a pretty lucky life now. I married right. I married I should write a book, married right now. But, I married Joanne, like she's a rock star. I married a beautiful woman who's, added so much value in my life. I've traveled a bunch. I've done a lot of things. I live a very blessed life, and I've got healthy kids. And so the book was for them, for their growth. I've read the book to the kids. My goal was to get really 3 5-star reviews from my 3 kids. Anything after that's just going to be bonus, right? So again, back to the question of like your audience, what would they get out of it? I mean, the premise is I anticipate my kids or anybody reading this book, okay, you want to be successful, you want to level up. And there is no shortage of literature out there on how you can level up and be successful. To me, the whole like grow right and the whole analogy that I use in the book, like if you're climbing the tree of success, if you will, and there's no lasting fruit on the tree. In other words, your character and your reputation and the value you're adding others, well, were you really successful? Like, are you going to be disappointed as you climb this tree and there's no fruit on it? Like, dude, I've been climbing the wrong tree the whole time. And I didn't want to have a fruitless career where I'm climbing the ladder only to get to the top and realize that this ladder's been leaning against the wrong wall or this tree bears no lasting fruit. And so really the whole grow right, which is the most important part, grow right, like grow with character. Like your character matters, your integrity matters, your values. There's a whole chapter in there on choosing your values on the front end rather than letting your values be exposed through your daily decisions. Like I remember, when that concept first hit me, I'm kind of like, I don't choose my values. My values are exposed through my daily decisions. Like, no, I want to choose my values. Okay, well then choose them, Jamie. I remember when I had to do the exercise, like choosing my values, I was just stumped. I'm looking at a blank piece of paper. I don't know my values. I don't know who I really am. I don't know what's really important to me. It might have been one of the most important exercises I've ever done. And now my kids do them. They individually, they choose their values every year. Like, okay, so what are your values? What's important to you? Give my son like, okay, listen, gaming is important. You spend a good amount of time doing it. Do you have a reason to why gaming is important? So I'm like, go ahead, put it down. Like it's obviously important to you. Don't not put it down and create a list of values that are, kind of a fib. Like let's just be honest. Let's put together the values, the things that are really important to us. So that's really the premise of the book is like figure out what growing right means, design your life, design your values, and then work relentlessly hard and do it now. Grow right now. Like, don't wait.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that sticks out to me, not only about your book but about you, is that you're not saying you're not a flawed individual, that you don't, make mistakes, things like that too. It's continuously, the notion of growing, right? Continuously, all the time. And I will say this, and I want to be very clear when you talk about the fruits of, your impact. One of the things I distinctly remember, and I was kind of reminded of this too, we always talk about teachers that inspired us, people that took us under our wing. I was in grade 10. You were in grade 12. I looked up to you like crazy coming onto the basketball team, and you could have like, you know, been horrible to me. And you really helped me, showed me leadership at that very early age. So a lot of like, I think about a lot of times the adults, but I don't necessarily think about the peers that are older than me. And it really meant a lot to me how you took care of me. So I was so excited to like get your book and, you know, continuously learn from you. One of the things that you said, and you'll see this I know you and I connect over social media here and there, but neither of us are really obsessed with it or on it all the time. One of the things that you said, which I have really believed, is that all my social media, all my footprints, all the stuff that I'm writing about, stuff that I'm sharing is a diary I'm leaving to my kids. So I'm very cognizant of how I interact with people, how I talk to people, how I don't get in fights on social media, because I don't want, you know, that's not what I want to leave to my kids, because that is something they're going to look at, right? And it's something I think about when we moved to Florida. I actually have these email accounts I created for my kids when they were born. And I actually emailed them why we moved. And here's why we moved. We moved. And they will not have access to these accounts until they're at least 18 years old. And the reason that was really important to me is I never really understood why my parents moved from Greece to Canada, right? And, you know, my dad passed away, I didn't know. And I want to make sure my kids know why I moved here and like why we moved here, you know, as a family. There was something you said, and I love it. And it's something I've always tried to do, but you really articulated really well. You said, make a decision on the front end and manage it on the back end, which really stuck out to me. And you kind of mentioned it briefly. Like, what do you mean by that? And why is that such an important thing for you? I actually read your whole book, man. It was pretty quick.
Yeah. I mean, listen,
I've only had it for a day.
Yeah, it's an easy read, obviously, you know.
Well, so I don't know if that's a slight to me. If George can read it.
It's funny. I'll get to your question. Just a quick thing on, because it's a short book. It's like 140, 150 pages, something like that. But I had to record the audiobook. And so little did I realize that I haven't publicly read since I was in elementary school. So I'm like, Jamie, when there's a period, you got to pause. Because I'm used to listening to everything on 1.5x, 2x, all this stuff. So it took me like 12 hours to record a 3-hour book, if you can imagine that. But the whole make a decision on the front end. So a couple years ago with baseball season, my son and I are having a terrible season. We didn't have a very good team, and he wanted to quit. And as a coach, I wanted to quit as well too. I did not like the situation we were in. And Dan and I are looking at each other, and I'm like, Dan, we made a decision at the beginning of the season, and hey, we didn't anticipate we were going to be given the bad news bears here. We didn't know this, but we can't make a decision, like a new decision now. We have to manage that decision. And at the end of the season, you and I both have a decision to make, whether we continue in baseball or have we finished the run here? You know, I'm not sure. But that's what it looks like. You make the decision on the front end and you manage that decision throughout the whole process, but there is no changing gears, shifting gears, making impulsive, emotional decisions midway through. Because I think that's what happens. Emotions get the best of us. And if you're making decisions when you're emotional, chances are you're not making very good decisions.
Yeah. And I think when I was reading this, one of the things that stuck out to me is a lot of times people overthink a decision and then they actually end up not making it. Whereas sometimes it's like, hey, I'm committing to this. What do I have to do to get there? And once I've committed, now I got to figure it out. And that really stuck out to me. There was something you said, and it's interesting because it is something that you teach adults, and it's something as a administrator was something I really focused on with kids because I wanted to equip them to be successful. And I would ask two questions if a kid got sent to the office to me. I'd ask them, why are you here? And I would let them talk. I'd let them kind of hear themselves, because if you're like, if you did this, they would not listen to you. Just like sometimes you get pulled over, cops telling you why you got pulled over, and you're like, whatever, you're a jerk, right? You don't think about that. So they would talk it through. And then after that, I would say, what would you do if you were me? And it's funny because you literally use the exact same term. If you were me, what would you do? And I wanted them to kind of be able to figure out when they make a mistake, if they screw up, what would they do to figure it out? And there's, I was reading a book called AI Driven Leader by Jeff Woods. And he actually said, has on his office something, it's something along the lines of like, what's your name? Why are you here? What are 3 solutions to your problem? Right? To actually before you knock on this door. So that idea of if you were me, what would you do? Why did you write about that? And why is that something that's so important to you?
Um, yeah. Well, so I think so that piece is in the chapter of like find a mentor. And so
Mm,
I have just found with all the interesting people that I've come across, I've been lucky to sit down with some very successful people. And again, you can define there's financial success, marriage success, parental success. I mean, whatever it is you're looking for, there are people certainly winning in those departments. And I seek these people out. I have found that the most productive question I could ask is to kind of frame a situation. Hey, here's what I'm going through,
mm,
and try to keep it short and simple. I don't want to bloviate and talk, too much. Here's what it is. If you were me, what would you do? That seems to be the most popular question that I've asked over the years, is just to tee something up, frame it, get their perspective,
mm,
hear what they've got to say. And then when I make a decision, again, back to the front end decision stuff, when I make a decision to do it that way, well, now I kind of have a new gear of confidence that I'm doing it the same way that this guy who I look at as super successful, well,
right.
that's what they would be doing as well too. Like it's not like I'm like, gee, I hope this goes well. I wonder if this is going to go well. No, I kind of know it's going to go well because that's what this individual was going to do. So that's where that came from. And I also use it obviously with other people, like, as they're like you're describing with the kids in school. Hey, how do you think we should deal with this? I do that all the time. I want to develop independent critical thinkers.
Mm,
Like, when a situation arises, let's just say I've got somebody in my business that commits fraud or something like that, and we'll talk it through. Hey, so, this is an interesting position for me. What do you think I should do? And so any time that it's framed that way, where people kind of like, oh, you're asking me my opinion, and if I was in your shoes, what would I do? I mean, I have a lot of confidence in people that they tend to figure things out.
yeah.
Like people are a lot smarter than I think we give them credit for. Like I don't think a lot of people need to necessarily be told what to do. I think they need more of a supportive environment where they can figure out what to do on their own.
Yeah, and the whole premise, and I talk a lot about empowerment in my work, is that if kids walk out of school and they need you to be successful or figure out their pathway, you haven't done your job. How do you get them to figure that out on their own? One of the things I really appreciate that you said, it was when you talked about success, because a lot of people see, you're a business person, obviously you had success in business, but it's not that I'm looking at. It's all the aspects of life, and I'm very focused. How do you help kids not only find success but define it for themselves, because it can mean very different things to different people, but often when kids walk out of school it's defined for them by someone else, and it's like, well, I'm not really excited about that, but that's how I'll be successful. So I think that really resonates with me. I want to just say thanks for taking time to be on the podcast. I know you're going to actually go coach your daughter's softball game right now, so I know you've stayed, and we probably stayed way longer than we expected, but I missed you, man. We're like, grew up, got me inspired in basketball. So everyone, I'm very proud of my friend, Jamie Hepp. He's got the new book, Grow Right Now. I don't care what field you're in. I encourage you to see my terrible notes. I just have the biggest sticky notes ever in it as well. It's good to catch up with you, man. It's been really awesome to see you.
Well, it's great catching up with you, and I love what you're doing. I mean, it's again, we were talking for an hour beforehand, and as you're describing your journey and your thought process and your values, I'm just kind of reminded, like, you are the George that I grew up
No,
with.
I'm not.
You were
No,
like,
I hope.
well, you always were like a little brother to me,
Thanks, man.
even though you've got older bros, but you were always that guy that from the day I met you, I really liked you. I liked who you were. I've always known you were a really good person. And I think it's great to see that the world knows what I've always known, George. You wouldn't be where you are right now if you weren't, that kind of character-driven guy. So I just want to throw you that on this little podcast that you put me on here today,
Thanks,
too.
man. It's gonna make me cry. Thanks, bro.
Yeah, good,
Hey, everyone,
good.
I really highly encourage you to check out Jamie's book. Someone I've always looked up to, and I still to this day. So thanks for watching and listening, Jamie. Thanks for your time, man. Really appreciate you.
You're welcome.